Happy Wednesday. Welcome back to the arena in the boardroom. We are now in phase one, the screening part of the evaluating process. And we are going to move into this and how this is going to help us get into the interview and ultimately the decision-making process. Drink of the episode this morning is a smoothie. I've got the recipe in the description, some exotic fruit, some strawberries, and I doubled down on the coconut milk from yesterday as well because I've still got some left. So moving in, phase one, the screen. This is the equivalent of dating in the interviewing world, right? You met somebody, you asked them out, and you're going to talk on a first date. You are going to have forced, awkward interaction with one another as you try to get to know each other and see if you want to continue doing this moving forward. So what does that mean? You use the information that you already have to frame the screen. You've got some baseline information about this person. You're going to use that to talk to them, not interview them. A screen should be a conversation. It shouldn't be an interview. And you should be precise in your verbiage about what this phase is and what the intention of it is going to be. And you should be using it to fill in some of the gaps that you currently have in the process that you would like to know more about this person. So I mentioned recording the interview. Why would we do that? So there's a couple of reasons why. A, organic interaction. And there's already going to be pressure with this quote unquote screen that is going to be viewed as an interview or as an awkward first date. There's already pressure. So recording it, really not going to add a whole lot of additional pressure to it. And you are going to then explain why you are recording it. So B, explain why you're recording it. That transparency is going to help build trust. Tell them it's part of your process. That internal accountability piece, right? It's a training opportunity. It's audits. It's accountability and compliance. We want to make sure we're asking the right questions. There was an example, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, an NFL GM asked an NFL player, I believe it was Jeff Ireland, who was at the Dolphins at the time, asked Des Bryant if his mom was a prostitute. That's a problem. That is never something you should ask, even in a place like professional sports where there are less concerns about ethics and getting things with those types of questions right. But still, that's a very horrible question to ask somebody that has very little to do with the person. And in an interview setting, in any job interview setting, something like that would be illegal. So again, recording helps create that level of accountability to make sure we're doing things at the same standard. And you can focus on the person rather than taking notes, right? There's no agenda really for a screening. You want to talk to this person to continue assessing their viability. So that out of the way, you're going to record. Now you've got to conduct the screen. How are you scaling the interview? Is there anything from phase zero that is shaping this? Did you give any pre-screening tasks? Does what you know match the person that you're talking to? You're going to want to keep those expectations pretty neutral. Could be disappointed, could gain some new insights, but you don't want to go in expecting anything in particular. It is just a neutral point to where you're going to get a chance to talk to somebody and get additional information. Be ready to deviate. Don't have a plan, but have some markers, some things that maybe you would like to learn more about, hear more about. Expect to have a conversation, bounce back and forth, interject yourself into it because that's how you're going to get a lot more of this information. So really that should all go. Once you kind of get into the screening, you get into that post-screening phase. What does that look like? The length here, you're looking at 15 to 30 minutes that you're going to try to talk to somebody. Keep it at that length because if you're recording it, you're going to have to watch the tape. And if you are talking to somebody for an hour and you've got to rewatch it for an hour, that's a decent chunk of time. 15, 30 minutes will give you enough time to listen, rewatch, and get some of the extra notes that you need after the fact. You're going to want to be timely with the review to determine those next steps. I would advise to maybe wait 24 hours before sending anything back, at least make it seem like it's an actual process. But there's a good chance you might know after the screen whether or not you're going to want to move forward with this person. But even if you do know that, or if you don't know that, watch the tape. And that's why you recorded it. If you recorded it, you want to watch it back for a reason. And that can be used as an internal evaluation tool as well. Maybe you phrased a question potentially wrong, maybe gauging based off of the body language, something like that didn't land as well as maybe you thought it would have. I mean, you can use this as an opportunity to retrain yourself as somebody who's working in personnel, and that's where that opportunity in making sure that we're upholding a standard that comes into effect. Not every screen means an actual interview is going to come after that. Use those markers to determine viability. We kind of get ourselves into a trap thinking, well, we interviewed them, we should just move them through. A good organization is going to be able to make the decision and say, look, we screened them, we got more information, or we confirmed what we already knew, we're not interested, and we can move on. And you can just kind of do that. The screens themselves are designed to save time, because if it gets to the point where you're having a hiring manager or somebody who's looking for somebody to talk to them, if you bring them a bad candidate, they're going to be rightfully disappointed with you, because managers, they got other stuff, right? Hiring personnel, they have us in these positions to make the process easier for them. And if you're giving them bad candidates, somebody that doesn't fit their qualifications, and you're just kind of doing this, you're wasting time, and that's hurting productivity, and that could potentially cost you a job. Don't base too much on a screening, positive or negative. Again, this is where the skills of an evaluator are going to come in. But a bad screen for a qualified candidate, you might want to take a little bit of a deeper look into why potentially that screen was poor, right? And if somebody didn't look like they were a great candidate on paper and you interviewed them and they screened well, evaluate. Try to understand why. What did you miss in that evaluation process that potentially led you to maybe have a negative opinion coming in, and maybe now you want to learn and explore a little bit more. Continue building that prospect's profile. So every new data point information that you get, keep building it up, right? You want to accrue as much information as possible. And again, phase 0, even though you're in phase 1, continues on, especially if social media is a thing, right? And they're active and they're posting or they're creating work, content, things outside of what they're interviewing for. If they're building that paper trail, that digital paper trail, the data you're getting is going to continue to grow, and those are just more things that you can use to help make a more informed decision, positive or negative. So this one's going to be quick. The screening is really not a difficult one because it's just a convo, but transitioning into phase 2, the interview phase, as soon as you're ready, right, within that window, let them know, right? The biggest issues that happen in this whole process are it takes way too long. You should not have an application. It shouldn't take a week to get back to somebody if they apply, and then it shouldn't take another week to schedule an interview, and then it shouldn't take, or a screen, and then it shouldn't take another week to schedule an interview. Like at that point, we're at 3 weeks, and we're talking about getting into really 4 or 5 weeks before a decision's even made. That's 2 pay cycles, right? Like people who are looking for work, especially if they're unemployed, there's a sense of urgency here, and we owe it as an organization to match that sense of urgency for them, and also for us. If we're hiring for a position, we want to get it filled. So as soon as you're ready, proceed on to phase 2 and let them know. Keep them informed of your process, what it looks like, and the timeline of that. And then as you're transitioning into phase 2, we're going to talk about this when we get into the interview. Set them up for success. If you're actually getting them to the point where they're going to be interviewing for the actual position with the hiring manager, that is what you want to make sure that they are going to be given the tools to interview well. And if they don't, you've got your answer, and that's just disappointing. But if you have a good candidate, give them the opportunity to be successful and see what they do with it. You owe them that much, and if you want them to be successful in your organization, that's a really good place to start. All right, phase 2 is going to be coming up. That is going to be tomorrow, Thursday. Teasing these platform changes again. We've got the name change. There will be a name change that's going to be coming into this, and there's going to be some creative works that come with that. And then some potential deviations in content as well, and that we're still kind of working on ourselves. So that's all for this one. Definitely shorter than the other 2. We're going to be under 10 minutes on this one. And then we're going to jump into phase 2, which is going to be the interview phase tomorrow on Thursday. As always, thanks for listening, and I will see you tomorrow.